Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you could find your seats, that would be great. A little bit better. Thank you. Okay, welcome everyone to Information Night 2022. I've got a little bit of a feedback here on the speaker. Yeah, perfect. Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much, everybody, for being here this evening. Looks like we have about maybe 15 or 20 folks in the audience. We have about an equal number online participating. And my goal tonight will be to make sure everybody has a chance to be heard, whether you're sitting here in the auditorium or if you're watching from home. My name is Chuck Worcester. I'm the town and school district moderator. I'll be overseeing this evening's meeting and the 4 events of the town meeting cycle for this year. So a quick overview. Town meeting day in Vermont this year is the first Tuesday. It's going to be March 1st. So that'll be all day voting as usual, we hope, here at the high school. The Saturday before that is the Hartford town meeting day. That's the day that we have budgets discussed. We vote on some of the articles on the warning on that Saturday. The Monday before that is our budget and candidates night. That's when the budget will be presented. Candidates for office will be presented. So those are the big 3, and those all happen closer to town meeting. But this is information night, which is a little bit of a less formal gathering, a chance for townspeople to discuss topics of interest that may or may not be on the warning for the year. So that's what brings us here this evening. As it happens, due to COVID and other issues, we don't have any bond issues this year that are being brought forward by either the school district or the town. Often this information night is a chance to look at bond issues. And since there aren't any this evening, we won't be doing that. And as a result, also the school board is not with us this evening since they have nothing that they wanted to speak about and present at this point. So what this means is tonight we have a chance to talk about an item that may or may not be on the warning, which the select board is considering putting on the warning, and that is whether Hartford should allow retail cannabis sales here in town. And other people can speak more intelligently to the details of this than I can. Other than, as many of you probably know, Vermont is in the process of legalizing retail sales of cannabis. And the step will be for individual towns to decide if they want to have that happen within their town boundaries, and towns need to vote in the affirmative if they want to do that. So there's a potential that that item will be on our warning in March. The select board will be voting, I believe, on that tomorrow night at their regularly scheduled select board meeting. But we thought this would be an excellent topic to sort of take a look at in more detail tonight at information night. So that's why we're all here. We're going to start off with a brief presentation from our town manager about some of the issues. It's a little bit difficult for folks at home to see, but I have 5 members of the select board here with me as well up on the stage. So if we have opportunity for them to speak or to answer questions, I'll certainly do that. So it's kind of an informal meeting tonight. We're not using Robert's Rules of Order. We're not voting on anything. So it's a little bit more casual than the formal town meeting. My goal is going to be to make sure that everybody who wishes to participate has a chance to speak, whether you're here or if you're online. If you're here, it's pretty straightforward. If you'd like to speak, come up and approach one of the microphones, and I'll recognize you when your time comes. Tell us your name and tell us where you live. You can just say Hartford is fine, or you can give us a village if you are so bold. But in sort of the context of town meeting, it's nice for us to know who's from the town and who is from nearby towns. So, and that's the same for you folks who are online. If you want to be recognized, you can click the raise your hand button, and I will know that you're in the queue. I'll try to alternate between kind of virtual and live. And once again, for the folks online, same thing, just tell us your name and where you live. So I think that's the overall ground rules. Anybody on the select board have anything that I forgot? Yes, Mr. Brown.
Just curious if there's any other board members online.
Are there board members online? I'm taking a look and I don't see any. So I think here we've got, just confirm. Got a couple of panelists here. That's us. No, I don't think so, Dennis, at this point.
Thanks for checking.
No, I'm sorry. Lanny is online. Yep. So I see we've got 5 here. We've got Lanny. I don't see our 7th member.
Did I allow Lanny to talk?
Sure. Yeah. Yep. That'd be great. Okay. Very good. If there's no other questions or housekeeping business, Tracy, why don't you come on up, our town manager, and give us a little presentation.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Chuck and I have a very different height. Let's just be honest there. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. But first off, let's see. Advanced sharing options. Uh-oh. Look at me. Those of you who've seen me know I'm usually a little bit better with this than there we go. All right. So I just put together some information so we could all start on the same page in terms of factual ideas. So this is pretty simple. You'll see it's just white on black. And away we go. Oh, we're not seeing it on this screen. Hold on. There we go. All right. I'm going to go ahead and minimize this. Dennis, Joe, you guys okay over there to see this?
Yeah. Yes.
There we go. All right. I'm also working on another computer than usual. So there we go. All right. Here's our current cannabis legislation in Vermont. A person can possess 1 ounce or less of cannabis, and a person can possess no more than 2 mature or 4 immature cannabis plants. This one gets a little small. Sorry for those of you who need readers. People can use cannabis in their own homes, in a rented apartment if the property owner okays it, and outside private spaces. People cannot smoke cannabis in any public place such as streets, parks, sidewalks, at any place where they're not allowed to use tobacco products. And people can also not use cannabis while driving or a passenger or on school campuses, daycare facilities, or after-school facilities. So that's where we are as of today. Currently, an individual may not sell cannabis. A person 21 or older can give 1 ounce or less to another person that's 21 or over if it's not advertised or promoted to the public. So this is what Hartford voters may be looking at in March. This has been around since October 2020. This was enacted just over a year and change ago. And it allows towns to vote to allow adult use recreational cannabis retailers. So Hartford is choosing whether or not to put on the ballot, whether or not you opt in to allow adult use recreational cannabis retailers. Medical dispensaries will be able to sell to the public starting in May. We currently do not have a medical dispensary, and new retail operations can start selling in October. You're going to see that is the actual language of the statute. And it basically says that prior to anybody operating within a municipality, the municipality must affirmatively permit. So they need to opt into the operation of those establishments. And one point of interesting information that we need to think about tonight is that last line: a municipality may place retailers or integrated licensees or both. So retailers are retailers. An integrated licensee, you'll see there on the bottom, allows the licensee to cultivate, manufacture, provide retail sales, and act as wholesalers and testing laboratories. So not only do you all get to choose whether you opt in or not opt in, we need to suss out retailers or integrated licensees or both. We got a lot of questions back in December when Joe helpfully got everybody together in this room. And here's where we're landing in terms of taxation. Vermont will be levying a 14% excise tax and the regular sales tax of 6%. So it's 20%. Of that amount, they're earmarking 30% for after-school learning programs, and 70% is going to go to the state's general fund. So, for example, if the retail price of a unit of cannabis at a store is $100, they'll be giving the charge will be $120. That 20% will be the tax. Of that $20, 30% of it will go to after school learning programs, and 70% of that 20 will go to the state's general fund. There was some questions about our local option tax. As of now, there's no method to add cannabis to the local option tax as we have it right now, which is the 1% on meals, rooms, and alcohol. It has been brought to the attention of the state leadership. This could change in coming months, but don't hold your breath if you're counting on it. We had a lot of questions about implementation in municipal operations. One thing to keep in mind is opting in doesn't circumvent local ordinances around zoning, signs, and nuisances like noise. However, the town cannot change those local ordinances to essentially eliminate the ability for a retail operation to open in the town. So there is some nuance there in that the regular process that planning and development goes through in terms of zoning and the regular process that the select board goes through around signages and things like the noise ordinance, those still apply, but we cannot make it virtually eliminate the ability for a retail operation once the opt-in is. From internally, what do we need? We're going to have some work on planning and development side. The town clerk will need to implement a licensing program. She already does one with regard to alcohol sales. And then the select board is going to have two pieces of information in terms of implementation. They're going to need to decide if they're going to create that local cannabis control commission. It's an acting body that is really set out from the state level for recommendations, advice, options. And the select board will also need to determine if they want to give the authority to approve and deny licenses to that cannabis control commission, or if they would like to keep it in their hands. Right now, if any of you have come to some of the select board meetings, they do that for alcohol permitting. One of the questions we did get that's not on the slide because there wasn't a really great way to break it down was if we anticipated seeing an increased call in service for both police and or fire. I'm going to take off my town manager hat for a second, put on my data analysis hat. I did speak with police and the fire department. They reached out to individuals that they knew, and there's no conclusive evidence on either way. And part of that is because we don't code calls that way. So we aren't going to necessarily code a call as cannabis related. We're not alone in that. Most municipalities don't. So we're not going to be able to get into that data analysis that we would like. And oftentimes we can't necessarily drill down into probably correlation or causation. Some municipalities do see an increase in petty theft or robbery, some do not. And honestly, there's not a really good comparable municipality to Hartford right now that has been doing this long enough for us to really dig into the data. I lean a little conservative on my data and seeing what actually works. So, I'm sure we'll have differences of opinion. And that is it for me, Chuck. I'm not up here with these folks tonight, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Fantastic.
Great, Tracy. Thanks very much for that. Hopefully answering some questions in advance. Are there members of the board who'd wish to speak as we get started? Yes, Mr. Brown. Why don't you make sure you're close to that microphone there?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm still trying to learn about this subject, and the town manager said something that made me wonder, something I don't know the answer to, is the difference between medical and recreational use of this, or the dispensaries. And I'm just curious, I'd like to learn more about how that works. Would we have potentially a medical dispensary and a recreation dispensary? Are they all the same? If anybody could help me out with the answer to that, that would be most helpful. Thank you very much.
please approach the microphone. Thanks. Yeah. Introduce yourself and let us know where you live.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Waterman from White River Junction. I just wanted to answer your question specifically, Dennis. So we have currently in the state, we have 5 medical dispensaries. They are owned by 3 out-of-state corporations. These are all very large, multi-state operators, is what we call them in the industry. One dispensary, the Montpelier dispensary, did take the option to have Hartford as their second location. You may have recalled this conversation a few years ago. They never ended up coming to Hartford to open their second location. They have instead focused on increasing their cultivation facility and their dispensary in Montpelier. And so the difference, medical, you have to have a relationship with your doctor, get them to approve that you have a condition that meets the medical requirements. You pay $50 a year to get your medical card, and you're allowed to go buy from the dispensary. This is there's a specific list of conditions that approves you to be a medical card holder in the state. Our medical numbers are decreasing since home grow in 2018. So we have seen some small declines to the medical population. Adult use, on the other hand, is anyone 21 years or older may go into a dispensary. Some people will say for, recreational, we talk about as adult use. Does that clarify the difference for you?
Could they be like one in the same building or location?
They absolutely could be. And so, if we were to approve it in Hartford, there is the chance that one of these integrated licensees could say, I want to put mine in Hartford. I think that's very unlikely, given the significant amount of infrastructure that they all have in other already existing locations around the state. But it is something to be considered. I am circulating a petition along with some other members of the community. I specifically left off the word integrated licensee because I am not in support of welcoming those businesses to Hartford. I would prefer to see independent retailers that are more likely to support our craft cultivators and our small farmers, because ultimately I think that's what Vermont is all about. I think it's important to note all of our medical dispensaries are owned by out-of-state corporations. One is actually a Canadian-based company. The largest cannabis company in the world, Curaleaf, operates 2 of our medical dispensaries. They have dispensaries in 23 states now, and their number is 117 dispensaries nationwide. These are big businesses.
Great. Thank you for that. Yeah. Dennis, is that?
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah. Anybody else from the board? I wanted to clarify for everybody sort of a procedural note here, which is, so tonight, of course, we will not be voting on this. Potentially the select board on their agenda for tomorrow, they may vote to put this question onto the warning. So that will be their prerogative tomorrow. There's also a petition circulating in town where townspeople could actually add a petition to put this onto the warning. So there's 2 ways that this could get onto the warning after this evening. So I just wanted to clarify that. Are you responding to Mr. Brown's question?
I was.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Please introduce yourself to us.
I'm Corey Birchman. I'm a resident of Hanover, New Hampshire. I'm a recently retired anesthesiologist and pain management physician. I'm somewhat of an authority on the use of cannabis as a therapeutic for medical patients, and I've advised the White House as well as half a dozen or so state legislatures. So I could respond to your question, which I assume was, what's the difference between a medical dispensary and an adult use or recreational dispensary? And there are several. Medical use generally isn't taxed as heavily, so the patients have access to it. And adult use, or also known as recreational dispensaries, but really adult use, that can be used by anybody. And interestingly, many medical patients utilize adult use dispensaries. You can get certain formulations of cannabis that are possibly more effective for certain pain disorders at, recreational dispensaries as opposed to medical, and also often vice versa. But I just wanted to clarify that.
Great. Thank you, Corey. Appreciate that. Yes, take a question here from the House. Please introduce yourself, sir.
Thank you, Chuck. My name is Jonathan Rugg. I'm a Hartford resident, a couple decades plus, and had 2 kids go through the Hartford high schools and go on to college and start professional careers. I am confused in the wording in the warning. Can somebody tell me what it means that there is no method to add cannabis to Hartford's local options tax? Does that mean that we cannot, as a municipality, impose a tax on a local options tax on cannabis? Or does that mean that we just can't tag it on to our existing rooms and meals tax?
Yes, I'll pass the microphone to Mike.
Hi, thanks, Mike Hoyt. This has actually been a subject of interest to me. So the bill passed by the legislature, initially it had a provision which would allow the towns to tax cannabis, sales of cannabis itself at a certain rate. And there's a bill circulating in Montpelier right now, which would look to tax it, I think at 4%, probably going to go down to 2%. Towns that have a local option sales tax of 1%, they would be able to tax cannabis. In Hartford, we just have the rooms, meals, and alcohol, likely because we're next to New Hampshire and West Lebanon. I'm sorry, I'm getting someone shaking their head. Go ahead. If I'm incorrect, please tell me.
We're next to that. You're good. You're good on what we do have a local option.
We have a local option tax, but it doesn't include the sales component. We would need a sales component. We local option tax alcohol, rooms, and meals, but not the sales.
But if we have a local options tax that includes sales, retail sales, can it just be cannabis, or is it everything except?
I think it would have to be everything.
It has to be everything. You can't exclude, you can't segregate cannabis.
What we'll need really is Montpelier.
Seems really convoluted. I mean, from my standpoint, location, location, location. We all know the adage. We are at the intersection of we are at the interchange of 2 interstate highways and a stone's throw across the river to Lebanon. We've got tourist areas like Killington and Woodstock to the west. We've got this great tourist people going through town and stuff. It seems like we could garner a lot of the retail business, and I just hate to see Hartford not be able to participate in that windfall. In a prior career, I was trading commodity lumber, and boy, I can tell you, when there's a seismic shift in a marketplace, like an underground illegal market coming into the light and becoming legalized and regulated, someone stands to make a lot of money. And it seems like Hartford should and could be able to capture some of that windfall.
I don't disagree with you. I mean, I think, it is important. It would be preferable, I think, in my opinion, at least, if we had the option to tax it. Cannabis specifically, we would need the legislature to do that. But my understanding is that the town can act amongst the other options for the local tax, a local sales tax, but the legislation doesn't allow us to sort of choose which.
And that's the legislation at the state level.
That's the legislation at the state level.
That may or may not. I mean, it would be a shame to levy a 1% sales tax in the town of Hartford, or a 2% or 3% or 4% sales tax in the town of Hartford. I wouldn't be in favor of that, but I would be absolutely in favor of leveraging whatever we can by way of garnering what we can from this windfall.
Yeah.
And I, somebody traveling from New Jersey up to Killington isn't going to not buy their marijuana because of a 4% local options tax.
Good. I agree.
Okay.
I think the solution is probably in Montpelier. It looks like they are considering adding the tax so that we can tax cannabis specifically. And I agree. I think there should be a method to do that.
But getting back to the original question, and thank you, Mike.
Yep.
Getting back to the original question, it sounds like there is no option short of a straight levy on all sales.
I think at this point,
current moment.
Yeah, I think
Thank
if
you.
the quick summary on the option tax. So as people generally know, in Vermont, the state collects the taxes and then redistributes them. Towns can vote through town meeting to add a local option tax. And as Mike said, one of those bundles is rooms, meals, and alcohol. And our town voted to do that 5 or 6 years ago. The other one is the general sales tax, and our town has not voted on that. But those are the current options unless the legislature acts differently. I do have a select board member here, Lanny Collins, who I'd love to hear from. He has his hand up. Lanny, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me, Chuck?
I can, yeah. It's a little bit quiet, so speak up if you can.
Yeah, so my biggest concern all along with this is sort of go along with what Mike Hoyt stated in the last individual spoke about, is that I've heard about all of the jobs that this will bring to Hartford. All the people will be coming and taking jobs and making good money. But I'm still stuck on the point of what it actually does to the town of Hartford having cannabis. There is no crystal ball that says a legislature is going to allow us to get a 4 or 5% tax on this. So your audience members that are in support of this are going to tell me that it brings all these great paying jobs in and that'll add to the grand list, which is true. I completely agree with that. But I want to know what people foresee the positive impacts strictly from the town itself. If somebody can answer that question, I'm all ears. Thank you.
Thanks, Lanny. We have a gentleman with the microphone. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Kendall Smith, White River Junction. I think that, so far the info that we've heard, the tax that's going through into the legislature, there really is going to be no issue. Both the House and the Senate both want that tax. The sticking point is going to be whether it's 4% or 2%, right? So I think that we can count on that for a town. I don't think that we can ignore that that's actually going to happen. They're not we talk to folks that are in the process of doing this a lot, and the scuttlebutt in the cannabis folks is that this is absolutely going to go forward. There isn't a question that we're going to get a 2% tax. A 2% tax on our local sales is huge for the town of Hartford. It should take all of the question off the table. There's no reason why it's going to go to a town if it's going to get sold. Good Lord, if we miss 2% of cannabis sales, that's going to come through the town where 89 and 91 comes together. If we don't do that, it's going to be such a swing and a miss. I mean, personally, I think that the select board should have had this on originally, and I think that there wasn't enough information for you, and I understand that. But this is about whether or not voters should decide, and this isn't about whether or not you guys decide if voters should decide. That seems ridiculous to me that we're even having this conversation. However, I think that as a town, we can count on the 2%, which is what this is all about. Thank you.
Thanks. I've got another questioner here online. I'll go to them. Andrew is what I have for you. Tell us your name and where you live.
Yeah, my name's Andrew. I am from Sharon, Vermont. And to add to the question of what it will do for Hartford, let alone like the sales tax, which I agree, it's going to be at least 2%. I think that other states have proven that, they give the local option for taxing cannabis. And I think that Vermont will follow suit. But not only that, but there's a lot of talk in Vermont about the fact that there is a lot of young people leaving the state. We're trying to attract more young people. So I think the cannabis industry does that. And direct result of that is going to be the amount of money. So these people are going to be making good money working in this industry. They're going to be spending that money in Hartford. They're going to be buying homes. They're going to be paying town taxes. They're going to be, participating in our community. And I think that if we do not allow cannabis retail operations to be in Hartford, then, it's just another missed opportunity to bring in more people, whether they're young or not. I think it's going to bring in more people. But I know that's something that Vermonters care about a lot, is increasing the amount of younger residents.
Great, Andrew, thanks very much. I see people listening intently here. If anybody wants to approach the microphone, do feel free. Sorry, thank you. Mr. Brown.
Thank you again, Mr. Moderator. I'm going to have to get some help here because where the word tax is flying around here, and I know that the town benefits greatly from our local option tax on rooms and meals, but what I'm hearing here is about sales tax that may apply to this product. And I know that the town gets some money through sales tax generally, but not directly. I gotta have some help on the definition and what's what here. I guess I would hope that the legislator would treat this like alcohol, probably. It's on our list of who might control this if we, the board, elect to have a cannabis control board. Right off the bat, I have to learn more about that, but I would think that the liquor control board that we already have, which is us, would probably administer this. That's what I'm imagining anyways. But I don't know why a sales tax would apply to this particular thing instead of a rooms and meals tax, which would, I understand the language in the legislature, the laws or whatever don't specifically point out cannabis, but that if anywhere that was to be applied, that's where I think it should come from. And the word sales tax frightens me, frankly, because as pointed out earlier, we're on the border of New Hampshire that doesn't have that. And growing up in a business here that was greatly affected when I grew up before sales tax here, we called it DDT, Dean Davis tax back then. And I guess I've said enough, but I really like to see this eventually nailed down to what tax is what. Thank you.
Mike, do you have any knowledge, or is anybody who talked about the 2%, 4%? Would that be a specific tax on cannabis?
My understanding is that would be a specific tax on the sales of cannabis and not on anything else. If we had to do it locally, if that wasn't a provision, it would be the 1% sales tax, which would apply to a wide number of goods, including cannabis. I just don't think rooms and meals, I don't think cannabis sort of fits in with those taxes, at least as they're probably defined in statute. So what we're hoping to come from Montpelier, and it sounds like there's momentum, is this essentially a specific grant of taxing power in the town applied only to our sales of cannabis.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, that I'm sorry.
Yep. Please introduce yourself. Tell us where you live.
My name is Gwen Tucson. I live in the town of Hartford. It seems like cannabis would fall into the category like alcohol and cigarettes, where you can tax them special and not like everything else. So with their sales tax. But my comment was, there was another gentleman that mentioned having the select board vote to have this on our town ballot would be, in my opinion, the appropriate thing to do so that the voters can decide this issue, since it may be more difficult for the voters to get a appropriate, whichever you call it, done with the pandemic. It's a lot harder to get people to sign things right now. Mm-hmm. So I would appreciate the select board letting us, the voters, including yourselves, vote, to pass this so we can decide to vote for it. Although I'm in favor of this opportunity, I also realize we need to consider the costs of having this, because you look at our history with prohibition and alcohol, you have a lot of people coming into our town to buy something like cannabis, and we're going to have some costs also.
Great. Thanks, Gwen. Yes, Joe.
Just so we're clear, tomorrow we are going to take this up and decide whether we're going to put this on the ballot. COVID is one of the considerations, and people going out and getting the adequate number of signatures. We want to reduce that situation. So, and also we don't want them to miss the deadline and then put it on a special ballot and have a special election and spend more money for that. So if we can have it on the March ballot, we would like to do that. So language and everything concerning what's going on the ballot will be discussed tomorrow, and we'll vote to put it on the ballot. It is a agenda item for tomorrow's meeting.
Great. Thanks, Joe. I'm actually going to go online now. We've got someone named Mike who's been waiting to speak here. Let me see, Mike, if I can get you live here. If so, tell us your name and where you live.
Hello, can you hear me, Chuck?
Hey, Mike. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike Morris, Hartford, Vermont. Thank you, everybody. I guess I could be brief on what my ultimate goal is, but I believe this should be put in front of the voters. They're the ones that make all the final decisions. It's not fair to put it on just 7 members of the elected officials to do this. But as many of you know, we lost our daughter to cancer less than 4 years ago. And she was a registered nurse, non-drug user, healthy until she got cancer. Exercised, ate right, dance classes 3 nights a week, out every night helping people, work in hospice. During that process of her diagnosis and treatment, cannabis products, edibles particularly, made her short life with cancer a lot more comfortable. I witnessed it firsthand. I was her caregiver. I made trips to Montpelier. And I know other people that in this area that also had to make trips to Montpelier or Rutland. I think it was the other dispensary. I think having this service here in the town would be deeply appreciated, particularly by medical needs people. I think there's enough non-medical use that it would then benefit us maybe tax-wise, but I'd like to stay away from what is it going to do for us tax purpose-wise, but the people that we are here to help is people that are in the medical field particularly. This hits me close to home because I really got to see firsthand during the treatments. Jenny would eat a couple of crackers and in a 45 minutes to a half hour, she was able to sleep or not feel nauseated, to have some comfort for whatever time period it lasted, and to have to travel all the way to Montpelier. There is got to be a high demand in this area because during that time frame that she was being treated, the 9 months, they started delivering down this way because they had such a demand from Montpelier. They charged, I think it was a $25 fee per person, and they would deliver it specifically to one address, and that was it. But I think having a dispensary here is going to be good for the town for many reasons. We're always talking about drawing business into our town. This is a business. It is a legalized business in the state of Vermont. I don't know why we'd want to turn it away. And I think that in the long run, to have clean drugs sold on the street as opposed to the contaminated or dirty drugs on the street that aren't controlled would be beneficial. We control alcohol for certain reasons. We can control the cannabis for certain reasons. So I am in true support, and my wife also, who's in the other room right now, support having a dispensary here. But we also support that this be put in front of the voters. This should come from the citizens, not just from the select board. But I think the select board should put it on the ballot, I guess is what I'm saying. So if anybody would like to ask me questions privately, what?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Mike. That's fantastic. I appreciate you calling in here. I've got Lanny Collins, a select board member, also wants to.
Well, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Lanny, I'm trying to unmute you here. It might be on your end. If can you unmute on your side? Okay, I'll work on that with Lanny. We have someone here in the audience who wishes to speak. Tell us your name and where you live.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Waterman again from White River.
Oh, great, thanks. I can't see anything through the lights here.
I have so much to say on this topic, and I don't want to monopolize. But going back to the tax piece, as the town manager went over, 6% sales tax, regular sales tax, and then the 14% cannabis excise tax. We're expected in the first full year of sales to see $264 million in sales in the state of Vermont. 14% of that is just shy of $37 million. So that's the excise tax alone. And it is from that, I believe, that we are discussing the 2 to 4% of that excise tax would be redistributed to host communities. The bill that was introduced by Jeanette White is S-152. If anyone would like to read the wording, it does talk about creating a formula of how to redistribute that to host communities based on number of dispensaries and population and all of those things. So it's not a direct 2 to 4% of the sales in Hartford. It is of the total, as my understanding of the bill.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. That's helpful. Yes, please introduce yourself.
My name's Miriam. I live in White River. I just wanted to add on a little bit to what the gentleman earlier was talking about who had the daughter who was sick. I've been doing a lot of canvassing and speaking to people in towns. I spoke with one woman who had MS. She does have a medical dispensary card. It's very difficult for her to get there. I've talked with other people that they've had trouble doing the forms, or, you know, their doctors denied it. So even just the fact that there are medical dispensaries, they're not necessarily user friendly, or those that could use them. They don't have a way to get there. They don't have a car. They don't have the gas money. They can't afford the delivery service. So as the gentleman was saying too, even though having a retail dispensary in town may not specifically be for medical, people in town that do have medical issues could use it, and that could help them.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. I've got a questioner waiting here online. Kathy, go ahead and tell us your name and where you live.
Hi, I'm Kathy Milisic. I live in Wilder, Vermont. And short and sweet, I am definitely in favor of putting this question before the voters. And I wanted to say how much I appreciated Mr. Morris's words tonight, and particularly his words when he talked at the meeting that Mr. Major had moderated. And to hear someone come around to a change of mind on something like this, I thought was very brave and very open-minded. And I really appreciate hearing that with someone. So yes, I am in favor of this coming before the voters. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. I've got another person online who wants to ask a second question, and I don't see anybody waiting at the microphone, so I'll go to that. But if you haven't had a chance to speak yet, do come up and I'll do my best to recognize you. But let's go, Andrew. We're back with you. I think it's Andrew from Sharon. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Sharon, Vermont. And I just wanted to add a little bit onto the medical use portion. So I actually used to work for the Montpelier dispensary. I was a grower there, and I heard a lot while I was there about the struggles of people who lived far away, traveling to go get medicine. And as Mike had mentioned, they did start offering a delivery service, but it's very infrequent and is an extra charge. And I could just say from my experience that I definitely think that there's a lot of patients that would really appreciate having this in Hartford. And to that point, there's also, whether it's recreational or medical or adult use, whatever you want to call it, there is a lot of evidence that suggests that people actually go to these adult use dispensaries for medical purposes, because medical marijuana laws are written with specific conditions that qualify patients. But cannabis helps a lot more than just that limited list of specific conditions. So I just want to point out that a lot of the customers that I think will be utilizing dispensary, whether it's adult use or not, are going to be using it for some kind of medicinal purpose. So that's just a hard thing to keep track of without, different information.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Just so everybody knows what's going on here. We've got about 22 people in the room and 23 people online. So that's kind of our audience at the moment. Yes.
David Briggs, White River Junction. I was intrigued by the comments made with regard to the total money, and I heard a $37 million number, and I didn't understand it. So I'd appreciate it if that person could come back up and sort that out in terms of, does that mean $37 million windfall to the entire state that would be distributed? And if that's true, is the distribution formula something like on a per capita basis, like Hartford has X, and that would be okay? So, so again, the total amount of money that we're talking about benefiting Vermont citizens would be $37 million, of which Hartford would get a share of that.
Yeah. So for folks, especially if you didn't hear that at home, it sounds like we believe the state's going to levy the excise tax that Tracy talked about. The estimate is that might be around $37 million. There's talk about some percentage of that coming back to the towns. So I think that's a good summary. If it's not, Stephanie, you can come on back up. But
and that's in addition, and then there's also the 6% sales tax. So the 37 million is just the 14%.
Got it.
The first year of sales.
Okay. So to clarify that, the 37 million would be from the specific excise tax. There would also be the 6% general sales tax that would be levied on it. So I think we're closing in on that. Yes, sir. Please reintroduce yourself.
Chuck John Rugg calling, White River, Hartford Village. Mike, I don't want to dig down too deep on this, but I'm still bollocksed up because we have in the local options tax, we have alcohol. And I don't know, is that just alcohol that's served in restaurants, or is that the beer that I buy at the co-op?
Yes.
You know, I'm not quite sure. I mean, certainly I believe what's sold at the restaurants.
It's sold within the town border.
Sold within town border.
So any alcohol sold within the town border?
I believe that's correct.
I just don't understand why we can't do the same with cannabis.
Well, we could. In this case, we is the legislature and the governor. So that in Vermont, the towns don't have the authority to do that.
But the town has the authority to levy a tax on alcohol, but not cannabis.
So to step back, the legislature gave towns the opportunity to levy a 1% tax on rooms, meals, alcohol, general sales. Our town elected to put the 1% on rooms, meals, alcohol, not on general sales. So that's the current state of affairs. The legislature could change that and they could put cannabis in some other bucket. But at present, that's the state of affairs. And it's the legislature that would decide that, not the select board.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yep. Yes, Mike.
Thank you. I had a question just because I don't know a lot about this. It looked like the town could opt to approve both retail license and then something like integrative licenses. And so maybe someone here knows that the integrative license is like a license to grow and then sell it to like the retail establishments. Is it like for the actual farming operations? I just wasn't clear about that.
Our current medical dispensaries are the only ones that are allowed to get an integrated license. So out of state, huge corporations are the only ones allowed to get integrated licenses.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Although you're allowed to own one of every license. So you could have a grow license, a retail license, a manufacturing license, a wholesale license. But that's different than integrated license. Integrated licenses also are allowed unlimited canopy under the law. They can grow wherever they want. Towns have no ability to regulate that at all. Anyway.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
Great. That was Kendall Smith again for folks who are at home. Yeah.
All right, Corey Birchman again. I just want to maybe embellish what Kendall just said. First of all, the rules for licensure haven't totally been established yet, but it sounds as if you will have a license.
So let's what he says.
Whoops, sorry, we're getting a little crosstalk here. I'll take care.
There's a license for retail, for cultivation, for manufacture, which is extraction, one for delivery. And an applicant can apply for any one of those licenses or a combination thereof, in which is called an integrated license.
Okay.
And the way the state is appearing to roll this out, they're looking only for, individuals and not large multi-state operators.
Great. Thanks, Corey.
Great.
You've been circling the microphone at a distance. Come on up.
Hi there. My name is Emily Zanleone. I live in Hartford, and full disclosure, I'm the executive director of your local community coalition. That means prevention, and prevention isn't all that popular in this room, I can tell. However, I think very, very much I need to say a little bit about that. So education and awareness are incredibly important, but they aren't enough. HCC believes that it's imperative that our elected officials use science and research to craft legislation that will keep up with the often ambiguous regulatory gaps on high potency THC. I'm going to take just 1 second also, because I think that this needs to also be said out loud. I'm going to take my HCC hat off. So please hear me say that. I'm going to stand here as a taxpayer and say that municipalities are not required to allow retail cannabis within their borders. This is not a requirement. This could go on the ballot next year. Some folks have been very concerned that that there might be a special election that has to take place if this doesn't go on the ballot right now. And darn it, Hartford, don't we know how expensive special elections are? From a personal point of view, I don't appreciate, as a taxpayer, being held hostage by this possibility. I think that we have potentially some very responsible business people that would not put that on our town. And to be very clear, Stephanie Waterman, you are very articulate. Thank you so much for being here. I want to make sure that we all hear that astronomical amount of potential revenue. So please remember that this is a big business. From a prevention standpoint, we need to plan now. I urge our elected officials that if you are going to make the decision yourselves to put this on our ballot, that you also start planning adequately around zoning and other laws to protect our health and safety of all of our citizens, and the potential of not inadvertently overburdening our taxpayers with the consequences of retail cannabis in Hartford. While there's societal enthusiasm for this emerging retail cannabis market, those of us who work in public health, those of us who have sat with young people who are already addicted, or watching a family member at home who is struggling with addiction, we have lots of concerns. And that's just as fair as all of the comments that have been made thus far about how much money Hartford might make with retail cannabis. But because there are a lot of people who work in prevention in Hartford, I urge the select board to let the local businesses put in the work to get this on the ballot so that the people can then vote. And I'm grateful that regardless of how this ends up, HCC will certainly look forward to working in partnership with our potential new retailers either way. Please, let's also remember that when we're talking about THC as retail cannabis and THC levels, THC is what causes the high and increases the likelihood of addiction. In 1960-70, the THC level was between 1.5% and 4%. 10 years ago, that was engineered to be more around 15%. And today, Vermont law currently allows up to 30% THC and 60% THC in edibles. So for those of you that were smoking back in the 60s, 70s, this is not the same thing. It's important that we be clear about that before we put this on our ballot. So I'll just say one other thing is that those in recovery out there, recovery is possible. Please reach out and let us know if you need some help. Vermont Help Link, 802-565-LINK. That's LINK, 565-LINK. We have the Turning Point Club right here in Hartford, who hosts many anonymous meetings throughout the week. And for those of you who still need a little encouragement, there is a Teens and Cannabis webinar coming on January 13th. This is put on by our friends at Healthy Lamoille Valley with legal retail cannabis coming. This will help answer some of those questions around youth use and public health data. So anybody who is interested in that, please reach out to us. Kelly C at hccvt.com can answer that question. Otherwise, please go to hccvt.org. Sorry, I said com, but I meant org, to learn more about what prevention is happening in Hartford. And prevention also means that we all work together. So I look forward to that first and foremost. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Emily. So that's once again, the HCC is the Hartford Community Coalition for folks who are at home. Our select board member, Lanny Collins, has his hand up. Let me see if I can get you on. Lanny, are you there? If so, go ahead.
Chuck, can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry about getting cut out before. In Hawaii here, I got sunspots, so I'll blame that on it. So my question is, I don't know if it's been presented tonight. Mr. Brown has spoken on it in the past. To get our stakeholders, other stakeholders in the town involved in this, if there's going to be grow houses involved in this, I'm sure we're going to need water and sewer, and to get grow houses going, it may end up having some police involvement or fire. I'm just wondering if we've had any of our department heads weigh in on this and have their opinions on how this will affect their departments and the impact upon the town. It's interested me to find out that input from them. And I'm not sure if somebody has done that or whether I missed the boat when I got cut off. If somebody's there in the audience that can answer that, or if one of our department heads there, I'd love to hear from them. Thank you, Chuck.
Great. Thanks, Lanny. Tracy's going to grab a microphone here and speak to that.
Just going to pick this up. Am I on? Sorry. The department heads are very interested and excited to learn how you all vote in March if this ends up on the ballot. Like I said in my presentation, this is not something that we can necessarily predict or even know where we're going to land in terms of either calls for service or impact on water and sewer, just as much as we don't understand what another business coming into the town or a large residential development would do until you get to that that point with planning and zoning where we bring in those departments to discuss those sorts of issues. So they're just as interested to see where this all lies, except for those department heads who are also voters. And we don't talk about that in town hall. So there you go.
Okay, so we'll have to wait for more details. Yes, sir. Please introduce yourself and tell us where you live.
Yes. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, you're good to go.
Okay. Can I take this mask off? It'd be a little easier.
Sure.
Thank you. There, I think I can speak a little bit better. My name is Joseph Trottier. I'm pretty much a lifelong resident in town of Hartford, except for 4 years in the U.S. Air Force and a couple years down in Heartland. But otherwise, I've lived in Hartford all my life. I grew up here, attended Hartford schools, went to Linden State College, spent 4 years in the Air Force, came home, and then attended State College. And from there, I want to say almost that this was a start of me getting on the wrong path in my life. I hate to admit it, but I am a recovered alcoholic and drug user. Okay, I just celebrated 38 years of sobriety. Okay, and I've also been a part of the Turning Point ever since it first started. And I've been to AA meetings, I've been to NA meetings, and I've seen lives shattered. Okay, now the biggest thing we're talking about here today, most people say, oh, pot, is not a gateway drug. Pot is the gateway drug, I'm telling you right now, that leads to it all, okay? I am not against medical marijuana treatment. I think that's a good idea, excellent idea, but I am dead set against recreational drugs. And I'm going to tell you why, because that's what recreational drugs almost basically almost ruined my life and almost killed me. One drug leads to another, to another, to another. I'm part of the guinea pig generation. As all of it was coming out, we all had to try it, and various and forth, and it just grew and grew and grew, from marijuana to hash to cocaine to crack to all the opioids and so forth. And it just, one thing led to the other, and it's deadly. And it's the thing about recreational marijuana is, the kids start young today. I'm a school bus driver, and they're talking about, they're doing drugs on the bus, not doing them on the bus, but they're talking about using drugs on the bus already in grade school and high school. And I'm seeing this, and this is going to lead to lives of destruction. Don't make this thing available to the youth. They will get it. If it is sold in the town, I guarantee you there will be a black market for it, and kids will get it, and it will ruin lives. And I'm serious about this. And I'm ashamed to admit it, that I was part of that for all those years. But thank God that he got my attention, and I'm lucky to be standing here alive today. A lot of my friends from the town of Hartford that I used to run with, okay, they're all dead. And I would just want to show you something to illustrate this. I'll show you folks in the back. This is a photograph taken up at the Pomfret Cemetery, North Pomfret in Vermont, back when I was in my younger years. Okay, there are 6 people in that photograph. I'm the only person alive. Every one of us. Okay, we're smoking pot and drinking drugs. We're up there laying out in the cemetery, smoking pot and drinking wine. We thought we were cool. Okay. Only did we know that we were on that hellbound train and it was going to kill us. And it's killed a lot of people in the town of Hartford. These are all Hartford residents. And if I don't care how much money that will bring into the town of Hartford. Are these people's lives worth any of that money, and your children and grandchildren? Can you see this, folks? You're glad to come up and look at it afterwards if you like. But I'm telling you, we do not need recreational marijuana in Hartford. Lives will be taken and lives are at risk. Drugs are a killer. And the combination of alcohol and drugs is like, playing with Russian roulette.
Thank you, Jeff. I've got a couple folks online I want to recognize. We've got John Boughton. John, introduce yourself and tell us where you live.
Right, thank you. My name is John Boughton. I live in the southern part of Hartford. Thanks for everybody who's spoken. I've been sort of struggling. I had to make a few notes for myself here. First of all, I guess I would say that I do support a town-wide vote. I do support the citizens having a vote and a say, and I really appreciate the thoughtful discussion that this is the topic is brought up. I want to say that I'm a bit annoyed that the discussion seems to be largely about money, or at least up until the past 3 or 4 people spoke, as opposed to other good reasons or other reasons, except for perhaps medical, for making cannabis more available in Hartford. I think the fact that we're talking so much about money, or so many people are talking about money, kind of speaks to our motive about wanting this as a retail thing in Hartford. And I'm not sure that money is the best reason to do this. That having been said, I strongly support that if we go ahead, that revenues from sales of cannabis go towards contributing to youth programs and prevention and recovery programs. And I would hope that we'd be able to link any money that comes to the town of Hartford directly to those programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chuck. My name is Gil Fanchulo. I live in Enfield, New Hampshire, but I have an office in White River Junction. And I'm here in support of my friend Miriam Woods, who is hoping to be able to open a dispensary in White River Junction. And Miriam, has 2 or 3 kids in the school. I wish I knew how precisely many, Miriam, you actually have. But this is not a big cannabis company we're talking about with Miriam. We're talking about a resident of the town who is entrepreneurial in spirit and wants to open this business. And so I think from that perspective, Vermont is in a unique position to do something really wonderful, to give Miriam an opportunity to open a business in White River Junction. That being said, and with all due respect to Mr. Trottier and Stephanie and others, I am an emeritus professor at Dartmouth. I founded the Palliative Medicine Service at Dartmouth. I'm retired. I've served on the Board of Medicine of the state of New Hampshire. And I can tell you that cannabis, marijuana, is not a gateway drug. And Stephanie mentioned this earlier, I think, when she talked about correlation and causation. And yes, certainly almost everybody who's a heroin addict has probably used marijuana. But that's a correlation. It does not mean that marijuana use leads to heroin use. It's just a correlation. It's not causation. And marijuana is not a gateway drug. The other thing I think it was Stephanie who mentioned earlier about the increased potency and the concern for cannabis. So we talk about potency in medicine quite a bit. And so the difference is that and potency is not the relevant measurement. And I don't want to get too technical, but its dosage is the relative measurement, is the important measurement. So if you have a cannabis product that's 3% THC and you take 5 puffs, that's exactly the same as taking 1 puff of a cannabis product that's 15% THC. And so you titrate these drugs to effect, whether it's pain relief or whatever, or recreational use, but you titrate them to effect. And there's no real risk with using a high potency cannabis product as far as we know. Now, maybe, and I will admit that maybe if we're going to get up to 30% THC, 40% THC, there may be something that turns out bad about that. But at this point in time, there is not. And the last thing I'll say is that I've been practicing end-of-life care really since the 70s. And I can remember in 1977, telling my patients to talk to their grandkids about how to get marijuana so that they could give it to their grandmother, okay, who was dying of cancer. There is no kid in this town that can't get marijuana if they want it. So, you know, it's a question of making it safer and regulating it. It's not a question of limiting its access, limiting the access to kids. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Our select board member, Lanny Collins, has had his hand up again. Lanny, let's see if I can get you back on the line here. Yep, Lanny, are you there?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to put my hand down, Chuck. My apologies.
Okay, great, no trouble. We've got some hands up here in the audience, so I'll go back to the microphone here. Yes, Mr. Briggs, please.
Dave Briggs, White River Junction. To John Booton's contention that we were looking at this merely for economic benefit, I'd raise a question, maybe it's rhetorical, maybe it's not, but what if we dedicated 100% of the so-called economic windfall to prevention, at least for a period of time until we had enough empirical experience to be reassured that we had been able to manage this new social evolution?
Thank you, David. Stephanie, welcome back.
Hi, Stephanie, not to be confused with the lovely prevention lady in the back, Emily, just so everyone's clear. Thank you. I've spoken a couple of times to answer some questions tonight, and I just want to read my prepared statement so you all have my complete thoughts. So my name's Stephanie Waterman. I'm a resident of Hartford. I'm co-owner of White River Grow Pro downtown. I'm here tonight to support opting in for cannabis retail. In the interest of full disclosure, I am seeking a retail nursery license to sell cannabis seeds and clones. It's something that fits in well with my current business. I am not currently seeking a retail dispensary license, though it is something I have spent a significant amount of time considering. My support for this initiative, however, goes well beyond my own personal business interest. Opting into cannabis retail in the town of Hartford will open our community to new business, new jobs, and new tourism. Opting in supports craft growers and small farmers entering the market, as they will require dispensaries to sell their products. The success of Vermont's craft market depends on towns to opt in turn allowing more independent retailers to come online. Hartford opting in sends a strong message that we are ready to support local independent businesses. Allowing dispensaries has not shown to increase use rates or drugged driving. What dispensaries do offer is increased access while shifting money and tax revenue into the legal system. These transactions are happening now on the underground market. Dispensaries shift sales to a legal, regulated market where people can access clean, tested products that are labeled with dosage information. To those of you who are still on the fence or opposed to hosting dispensaries, I'll say this. As a responsible adult, should I choose to drink a beer or smoke a joint, there is really no difference. The difference in perception between these two things lies in years of prohibition and propaganda messaging surrounding cannabis. And the history of this messaging is rooted in racism. If you imbibe in alcohol, yet still sit opposed to adult cannabis use, I ask you to educate yourself and examine your own bias. I invite those present tonight to sign the petition to get the question of cannabis on the town meeting day ballot. We are very close to our number with less than 70 signatures to go. Thank you so much to those here who have helped with canvassing. I will be here tonight at the exit for you to sign on your way out, or you can also come down to GrowPro Tuesday or Wednesday this week. And I also urge you to vote in favor at town meeting and welcome this new economy to our town. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. We have another gentleman approaching the microphone. Yes, sir. Please tell us your name and where you live.
My name's Leonard Morris. I'm a lifelong resident of Hartford. Been a carpenter for almost 50 years. When I started in carpentry field, I worked with a fellow for about 5 years. He then quit to become a minister up in Randolph in that area. I went up to get my COVID shot in Randolph and I visited him. And that's the first word he said about COVID or cannabis was gateway. He's got 40 years of experience dealing with kids. He's done youth baseball and all that. So that's his experience. And I look at the humans as a species and we're basically habit forming. You know, you talk about alcohol, you talk about gambling, you talk about cannabis. Maybe it's not a gateway, but it certainly starts people out down the road. And you look at all the gambling establishments we have now, and they've all got to put money back into compulsive gambling to help that part of the human people. So are we going to, you know, put some of the money back into supporting people who are compulsive and have addictive personalities that are going to use it? That's all I've got to say.
Great. Thank you, Lynn. Select board members, anybody have questions you want to ask of our citizenry here? We still have a few dozen people in the audience. We have a couple dozen online. Anything you guys need to hear about before your decision tomorrow? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, for that. Yeah, I have mixed feelings about this. I do feel that it would be nice to have the voters decide on this, but even then I have questions because I think in a recent election, maybe even the last election, we had people that voted for the climate action plan that I think with the numbers that were there, they also voted for the pool. And so I just wonder sometimes about voters and possibly what they might be thinking. So, but ultimately the voters should be, educate themselves and make their decisions. So I'll probably go ahead with this as far as us putting it on the ballot, but it comes with a lot of reservation too. Thank you.
Just want to point out that Dennis asked, he'd like to know what voters are thinking. It's a great question for everybody in the room here. Other select board members, do you want to ask a question or make a comment? No pressure. Yep. Okay, great. I don't see Lanny's hand up. Yes, sir.
I forgot one thing.
Yep.
I realize it's a drug and it has its good benefits, and I definitely support the use and for, you know, like cancer and stuff like that. But it's also something that can be overused and taken advantage of.
Hi, Miriam again from White River. So we've certainly been doing a lot of canvassing, and that's given us time to certainly talk to a lot of people that we haven't met in town. I would say a lot of people who have signed who are still on the fence, and some even that are opposed to it, coming back to the fact that let the voters decide, democracy, et cetera. So I would say the same thing, you know, let the voters decide.
Thank you. I have Mike here. Once again, I think it's Mike Morris. Mike, are you there? If so, you could unmute.
Yes, Chuck, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good to go.
Yeah. Boy, I appreciate hearing everybody's input here, pro and con. I would like to hear more from select board members if other than two that have spoken with their questions of what their thoughts or concerns might be, but we're not making a decision whether this is going to be a legal product sold in the state of Vermont. We're not making a decision of is it going to be available for recreational use or whatever, that's already been decided. The state has already decided that. What I think we're talking about here is, are we going to allow the sales in our town and not lose a business to somewhere else? Because I believe if we don't open up a dispensary here, it's going to get opened up next door or another town or whatever. So why pass it up? I also failed to mention that I had a brother that passed away in '98 that way before cannabis was even used for medical purposes. And Hitchcock doctors and my wife, who worked oncology and everything else here, knows that that was one of the things they highly recommended. If you could get some cannabis, it would help you through things. So again, we're going back to medical use, but I think we need to realize that we allow alcohol sales, and that's probably the number one killer and the number one drug out there that gets abused. People get shot. They don't remember what happened. They have accidents and everything else because they're of alcohol use, and we're not stopping that sales in our town. So why would we prevent another legal sale of a product that's within our township? So again, I support it, and I urge the select board to put it on the ballot, to not let it be just on their shoulders, to make a decision to let it go for the citizens. And I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Cliff Rogers from White River Junction. I don't really have anything new to say. What he just said is basically what was been echoing through my head. But I know that moving it from the black market to a legal sale is it makes it much safer for everyone involved, the seller, the buyer, everyone in between.
Great. Thank you, Cliff. Yes, a new voice here.
Hi, thanks. My name is Jacob Reitbach. I live in Wilder. I appreciate everybody here tonight. On all sides of the conversation. It's not really, it's not just a binary conversation. We're having an open conversation about how to bring this to our community or welcome it and embrace it because it is here. And just one point that hasn't been brought up is what this is going to do by putting this on our ballot in March. You're going to bring a lot of people out to vote. You're going to bring a lot of young people out to vote, a lot of people of color who are not usually participating in our politics because they don't feel like there's a reason for them to do it. And a smart politician in 2022 and the years ahead would put this on any ballot in the country because you could get a lot more people out to vote. And most of them would vote in favor of it. And everybody knows where those demographics lie on which side of the aisle. So I just like to point out that I'm in favor of it. And I think that there's more to it than obviously taxation or jobs. Those are secondary, I think. This is a pursuit of happiness, liberty and pursuit of happiness. We should be able to do this legally. We are able to do this legally, purchase it legally in our community here, and then give people an opportunity to vote on, and you'll see what people think. They will be coming out in droves. So that's my implore you to, put it on there, let people speak their minds at the ballot.
Great. Thank you, Jacob. I've got a new participant online here. See if I'm in the right spot here. Scott, tell us who you are and where you live, if you're there. Scott, are you with us? Sort of like a talk show here. Okay, we'll try to come back to
Scott. Are you trying to get Scott Neal?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's a confusion here. This is Sherry McCleary. Long story short, I'm on my husband's. His name is not Scott Neal, but my husband does some information presentations for his local church, and the minister is Scott Neal. There's confusions here.
All right, so Sherry, tell us who you are and where you live.
All right, my name is Sherry McCleary, and I live here in White River Junction. And I've appreciated hearing all of this, both sides. It's a lot to chew on. I'm wondering if there is any concrete literature out there on the research of how the current towns and states, Oregon, Colorado, all of them, have been affected, positive or negative, by the introduction of cannabis sales in their areas. Were there any surprises? I'd love to see, places that have already have this in the works. Is it working there? What are their regrets? What are their what are they learning? Let's learn from this. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's look at that stuff. Is there any way to get our hands on some of that information? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sherry or Scott. That's great. There was definitely some nodding of heads here in the room. Maybe one of someone who knows something about this. Just quickly come to the microphone, and if you could point people who want that type of info where they should look for it.
Sure. After our December 13th forum, HCC created a document that both sides have contributed to. Please see it's on our homepage, hccvt.org. So that's Hartford Community Coalition Vermont.org, hccvt.org. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Yes, a new voice here. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Chuck. Sheila Armanguici. I'd just like to say that a year ago, I asked the select board to take this up and get it on last year's ballot. So I'm really thrilled to think that we're here and we've come this far. I'm hoping that you put it out to the people because that was the intention of the legislature, to put it out to the people, not to have just a small group of people make the decision. The other thing is that, we're not here for the money. I mean, we are thinking about the fact that the money could be a benefit, but it's not the driving force. We're here because it's legal and because it's a new business and we're trying to get it into availability. Definitely for it. And I'm hoping that I'll be part of the industry as we go forward. It's not a gateway drug. It's a drug that's been around for a long time. Alcohol and cigarettes kill more people every day than we can count, and it's legal. So we all know that everybody that wants to smoke pot can smoke pot right now. It's going to be safer, and I'm all for regulation. Let's get it done.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. Yes, Joe.
Yes, I too am disturbed by the angle. Everybody's looking at it for the monetary rewards that it will bring to the community and all of that. But at what price are lives worth? Okay. The other thing is, if you'll remember, I can remember growing up here in Hartford, we had 3 regular police officers and 2 part-time police officers. Population back then was about 4,000. We're a little over 10,000 now. Okay, the police department at one time had Hartford, it's down a bit right now, 33 police officers. At what cost to the people, taxpayers down? Now they're saying, oh, well, Ken Parker told me that's because of the interstate highways. And he is absolutely right. That has brought a lot more criminals into the area and drugs. There's a huge traffic of White River is a mecca for the drug dealers. It's so easy for them to, legal or not, they're still going to be out there. They're still going to create more crime. There's going to be deaths and murders and robberies and all of that. And go down to, take a visit to the Springfield prison, state of Vermont down there, and see how many people there and ask how many people are there because of drugs and robberies and crime related to drugs. And I can honestly say that my experience, I know that marijuana is a gateway drug. It leads from one to another, and it just increases from there, and people's lives are changed, ruined, and lost because of recreational marijuana.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Okay, I have a question from someone online, a new person. Mary, if you're there, you can go ahead. Maybe reaching for your mute button.
I unmuted, yes. Mary Nato, I live in Hartford Village, and I have one question. Have studies been done to determine what the long-term effects of inhaling marijuana smoke will do to the human lungs? We already know what happens when people smoke cigarettes and inhale But what about marijuana? What long-term effect does that have?
All right, Mary, it's a good question. We have someone approaching the microphone here. I'm sure that information is out there.
Thank you. So the first thing is that there has not been any increase incidence of lung cancer in patients who smoke cannabis. There are a lot of reasons, hypothetical reasons for that. One is that cannabis may have some anti-neoplastic or anti-cancer effects. The other is that people who smoke marijuana, if they don't smoke 2 joints a day, I don't think, maybe a joint a day or 2 joints a day, but it's not like 42 cigarettes a day. So it's a much lower dose. There were very good studies done on head and neck cancer, which, tobacco causes head and neck cancer, alcohol causes head and neck cancer, cancer of the tongue, cancer of the lips, cancer of the mouth. One of the cancers that's on my list of the cancer that I most don't want to get. And there's no increased risk of head and neck cancer in people who smoke cannabis if you control for cigarette smoking. So it seems like for whatever reason, whether there's an anti-neoplastic effect or whatever, for whatever reason, there's not an increased risk of cancer in people who smoke cannabis.
Great, thank you. Okay, I've come to a moment in the program here where I have no questions pending, either in the House or online. Any other comments from select board members before we wrap up? Yes, Ali, go ahead and just introduce yourself too.
Hi, folks. Ali Tefendran, one of your select board members. It seems like we might be closing out soon. So just to say, as we will be discussing this and voting tomorrow in the select board meeting, and if we were to vote to put this on the ballot, I would just encourage folks to reach out to the board. If I could offer up Hartford Community Coalition, I'm looking at Emily to see if, just to say also to, reach out maybe to HCC if there are particular questions that you all might have and your friends and neighbors about what information you might need to make an informed decision when you vote come March. That would be incredibly helpful information to know so that we can help compile that information and get you answers to those questions so that you can make an informed decision should we vote to put this on the ballot in March. And I appreciate everyone being here and for the open discussion and to Chuck as well.
Great, thanks, Ali. Okay, coming attractions. Tomorrow night, as Ali said, Select Board will be taking this up, their decision on whether to put this onto the warning. And after that, we will reconvene on Monday, February 21st, which will be Budget and Candidates Night. And that's what we'll be getting into sort of the thicket of town meeting. So I think that covers everything we have for the evening. So thank you very much to everybody who came in person and also online. I was pleasantly surprised at how well the technology worked out. And I hope it was good for, that it worked well for people at home too, that they could hear everything. So thank you, select board members. Thank you, Tracy, for your presentation. And we will see you before long. Good night.